The lights in the warehouse gym buzzed faintly, casting shadows across rows of old punching bags and steel beams. The smell of leather gloves, sweat, and motorcycle oil filled the air. People crowded in, shoulder to shoulder, their voices low but buzzing with anticipation. And then, the doors opened. A roar swept through the room. Because in walked Alexis Knight, the woman tabloids called the Lady Biker Billionaire. She was tall, striking, dressed not in designer gowns but in black biker gear and boots that thudded against the concrete floor. Her long leather jacket swayed as she strode forward, helmet in one hand, confidence in the other. Her reputation preceded her, rebellious heiress, self-made empire builder, and the kind of woman who turned heads in boardrooms and back alleys alike. But she wasn't here for cameras. She wasn't here for charity speeches. She was here to fight. And she wanted an opponent no one saw coming. The unlikely challenger. In the far corner, setting down folded chairs for kids who trained at the gym, was a man who seemed invisible to the crowd. He didn't wear flashy clothes, didn't look powerful. His shoulders were broad but tired, his hands calloused from work rather than luxury. This was Daniel Cole. A veteran. A single father of two. He had come to the event as a volunteer, not a fighter. To earn a small stipend to help cover his bills, to show his kids what community meant. But Alexis's gaze locked on him like a hawk spotting prey. "You," she said, pointing across the room. Her voice cut through the chatter like a blade. "I want to spar with you." Everyone froze. Daniel blinked, stunned. "Me? No, I'm not here to." "Yes. You," Alexis interrupted, her smirk daring him to refuse. The crowd began to whisper. Some laughed. Others pulled out their phones to record. It was absurd, wasn't it? A billionaire biker challenging an exhausted single dad? But Alexis Knight wasn't a woman who did things. "Come on, man," someone shouted from the back. "Give her a fight," another chimed in. Daniel shook his head, waving his hands. Look, I don't do this anymore." But the chants grew louder. People clapped, stomped their feet, chanted his name without even knowing who he was. And inside, Daniel felt something stirring. He had lived years in silence, invisible in rooms full of noise. Maybe tonight was different. Maybe tonight wasn't about winning, maybe it was about finally being seen. He looked at Alexis, whose eyes gleamed with challenge. And against every instinct screaming at him, the bell rang. Alexis moved with grace, quick, sharp, deliberate. She had trained in martial arts for years, sparring with professionals across the globe. Her strikes were precise, her footwork fast. Daniel, however, didn't move like a boxer. He moved like a soldier. Each block was efficient, conserving energy, reading her movements with calm precision. The crow walk away, Daniel slowly stepped onto the mat. Halfway, Alexis moved with grace, quick, sharp, deliberate. She had trained in martial arts for years, sparring with professionals across the globe. Her strikes were precise, her footwork fast. Daniel, however, didn't move like a boxer. He moved like a soldier. Each block was efficient, conserving energy, reading her movements with calm precision. The crowd roared as Alexis landed a clean jab, making Daniel stumble. But he didn't fall. He reset his stance, his face unreadable. "You fight like a soldier," Alexis said between breaths, circling him. "That's because I was one," Daniel replied quietly. The fight grew intense, but different. Alexis attacked with fire, Daniel defended with patience. Every blow she delivered met a wall of endurance. Every counter he gave was fueled not by pride, but by survival. The gym grew strangely quiet. People leaned forward, sensing this wasn't just entertainment. This was something deeper. The flashbacks. With every strike, Daniel's mind betrayed him, pulling him into memories. He remembered the desert heat pressing on his back while carrying heavy gear, sand filling his boots as gunfire echoed in the distance. He remembered the letter he got overseas, announcing the birth of his son, and the ache in his chest knowing he wasn't there to hold him. He remembered coming home years later, kissing his daughter for the first time. He remembered holding his wife's hand in a hospital bed, praying for a miracle that never came. And then he remembered the nights afterward, 2 kids asleep in the next room, and him sitting at the kitchen table staring at bills he couldn't pay. His arms ached, but he kept blocking. His body shook, but he kept standing. Because that's what he had always done. And Alexis noticed. The moment of respect. Halfway through, Alexis dropped her guard unexpectedly, lowering her gloves. The crowd gasped. Daniel froze, unsure. "You're not fighting me," she said softly, her voice carrying across the hushed room. "You're fighting everything you've ever carried." Her words hit harder than any punch. Daniel slowly lowered his hands too, his chest rising and falling. Sweat dripped down his brow, but his eyes were steady. Alexis stepped closer. "I've sparred with champions. I've sat across billionaires. But I've never seen anyone carry that much weight and still refuse to fall." The room erupted in applause. People weren't cheering for Alexis anymore. They were cheering for Daniel. When the round ended, Alexis grabbed Daniel's wrist and raised his hand like he was the victor. The crowd went wild, chanting his name. Cameras flashed. Daniel shook his head, overwhelmed. "I didn't win anything tonight." "Yes, you did," Alexis countered firmly. "You won respect. And you reminded every person here that true strength doesn't come from money or fame. It comes from standing when everything in life tries to break you." Tears welled in the eyes of strangers. Veterans in the audience stood straighter. Single parents clutched their children. And Daniel? For the first time in years, he felt seen. Building something greater. But Alexis wasn't done. That night, she announced her decision. She would fund a veteran support and single-parent training center in Daniel's name. Daniel's mouth fell open. "What? No, I don't need." "This isn't about what you need," Alexis interrupted. "It's about what others like you need. And they need someone like you leading it." Daniel hesitated. He had been burned by promises before. But Alexis was relentless. And so began their unlikely partnership. Challenges they faced. It wasn't easy. Daniel distrusted billionaires. He had seen charities that were more about PR than people. He refused to let his name be used unless it was real. Alexis, on the other hand, wasn't used to being challenged. She was used to snapping her fingers and watching teams jump. But Daniel didn't bend. He questioned everything, demanded transparency, and pushed for the voices of veterans and single parents to be heard above investors. They clashed. They argued. Daniel walked out of meetings more than once. Alexis lost her temper more than once. But they kept coming back. Because despite their differences, they shared the same goal, to build something that truly mattered. A turning point. One evening, after a long planning session, Daniel sat outside the gym with his kids asleep beside him. His shoulders sagged with exhaustion. Alexis walked out quietly, sitting beside him. For once, she didn't look like a billionaire. She just looked human. "You're tired," she said softly. "I'm always tired," Daniel chuckled, though his eyes betrayed his pain. "But I can't afford to stop." Alexis hesitated, then spoke. "Then let me carry some of that weight with you." Daniel looked at her, unsure if he could trust her words. But in her eyes, he didn't see pity. He saw a partnership. For the first time, he let himself believe he didn't have to carry everything alone. The launch. Months later, the new Nightcole Resilience Center opened its doors. The gym was packed with veterans, single parents, children, journalists, and community members. Daniel stood at the podium, nerves buzzing in his chest. His kids stood proudly by his side. Alexis watched from the front row. He gripped the microphone, his voice trembling at first, then growing stronger. "I never thought I'd be standing here. I never thought my story mattered. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that your scars don't define you. Your battles don't break you. What defines you is the courage to keep standing, for the people who need you most." The room erupted in applause. Some stood. Others cried. And in that moment, Daniel realized he hadn't just sparred with a billionaire that night. He had sparked a movement. The message. Strength is not measured in moan.